destroy Chinese Communist Party, eradicate enemies, exterminate enemies. Honorable President Donald J. Trump and all of the free citizens in the United States of America. The civil war currently unfolding in South Korea is a result of the great struggle between Chinese communism and North communism. Therefore, we must win the fight against these evil forces in order to protect and develop the free democratic Republic of Korea. Today, I'd like to tell you about specific and practical measures to dismantle and destroy the Chinese Communist Party. Today's topic is, in order to dismantle the Chinese Navy, we must block the flow of ship parts into China. Hello, everybody. I am speaking to you on behalf of Indo-Pacific Strategy Institute of the Republic of Korea. I would appreciate it if you could forward this letter to President Donald J. Trump and his staffs. As a former case officer of the National Intelligence Service of the Republic of Korea, I was a secret agent who mainly dealt with North Korean and Chinese issues on the ground. I graduated from the Department of Chinese Language and Literature at Seoul National University and received a master's degree in Chinese simultaneous interpretation from the Graduate School of Interpretation and Translation at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. I have worked mainly in China, the America, and Asia. I would appreciate it if you could deliver President Trump and his loyal and honest advisors how to completely destroy China's naval power. The Chinese Navy is building ships so fast that American strategists are worried about by 2030, the Chinese Navy will have over 400 ships. This problem is so simple and easy for Koreans to see. So, I don't know why American strategists are worried about it. President Donald J. Trump should ask HD Hyundai Heavy Industries to invest $10 billion to $30 billion in the American shipbuilding industry and build a shipyard in the United States that is 5 times larger than the largest shipyard in the world in Ulsan. Currently, United States shipyards are too old and their sites are too small. So, it is inefficient for Korean shipbuilders to take over existing U.S. shipyards and invest additional facilities in them, as it requires a lot of money and time. Since the United States had so immense land left, it would be more efficient for President Donald J. Trump to provide a large-scale shipyard site in an appropriate location and ask Hyundai Heavy Industries to build a facility 5 times larger than the largest shipyard in the world, shipyard facilities in Ulsan, to create a new facility. HD Hyundai Heavy Industries may refuse to build merchant ships in the U.S. and export them, believing that it would not be competitive in terms of price. However, if we were to ruin all the shipping companies and all the shipyards in China, the demand for commercial shipbuilding would explode worldwide, and the unit price of building a commercial ship would rise by at least 5 to 10 times. Then, even if they build merchant ship in the U.S., where labor costs are high, they will be able to sell them, since HD Hyundai Heavy Industries has shipyards in Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. They will make astronomical amount of money. Then it would not be difficult at all for Hyundai Heavy Industries to invest $10 to $30 billion in the U.S. shipping industry. Korea already lacks land to build shipyards. Therefore, even if all Chinese shipyards fail and orders pour into Korea, we will not be able to handle it all. The docks are already full and there is a backlog of work for the next 4 to 5 years in Korea. Therefore, all you have to do is give the land to Hyundai Heavy Industry in the US for free, build a shipyard 5 times larger than the one in Ulsan, and ask them to build merchant ships in the United States, while promising to ruin all the shipyard and shipping company in China. If we build a shipyard in the U.S. that is 5 times larger than the Ulsan shipyard, it will be possible to build 10 to 20 Aegis ships at the same time. With just the blueprint, Hyundai Heavy Industries can build a 12,000-ton Aegis ship and deliver it to the Korean Navy in just 18 months. So from now on, I will explain you the secret of how to make all the shipyards and shipping companies in China go bankrupt within 6 months, and how to turn all 300 to 400 Chinese naval ships into scrap metal within 6 months. If all ships built in Chinese shipyard, regardless of the nationality of the ship owner, were banned from entering U.S. port and transiting the Panama Canal, Chinese shipyards and Chinese shipping company will all go bankrupt within 6 months. If we ban all U.S. port and stop transit through the Panama Canal on the pretext that safety is not guaranteed because merchant ships built in Chinese shipyards are causing problems all over the world, no one will be able to object. Shippers around the world will not entrust their cargo to Chinese shipping companies, and ship owners around the world will not order ships from Chinese shipyards. This will make Korean shipyards and shipping company make a lot of money. If a merchant ship cannot enter a U.S. port, it is like receiving a death sentence, and it cannot be sold as a used ship. It will just have to be sold as scrap metal. I would like you to introduce legislation to ban exports to China of all marine parts exported to China. Currently, all semiconductor equipment and advanced semiconductor technology exports to China are banned. And semiconductor-related investment in China are also banned. In the same way, we ask that you stop exporting to China ship parts and the technology to manufacture ship parts, and also prohibit investment in China related to the production of ship parts. Currently, Chinese shipyards are purchasing marine engines and navigation equipment from Korea, Germany, and Japan, and simply assembling them in Chinese shipyards. If all the shipyards in China fail in business and Hyundai Heavy Industries builds a shipyard 5 times the size of Ulsan shipyard on vast, immense land in the United States, it will be possible to build all the ships that were being built in China in the United States. What difference does it make whether we source ship parts from Korea, Germany, and Japan and assemble them in China or in the United States? China has cheap labor and the U.S. has more expensive labor than Korea. So, if merchant ships were built in U.S. shipyard, their price competitiveness would decline and export would be impossible. However, if all the shipyards in China go bankrupt, the unit price of merchant ship will rise by at least 5 times, and ship owners will not be able to secure merchant ships. Therefore, merchant ship built in the United States, where labor is expensive, will be purchased with gratitude by ship owners. If Hyundai Heavy Industries, the world's largest shipyard, sets up a shipyard in the U.S. and builds merchant ships, no one will be able to raise an objection about the quality of the merchant ships, despite the disadvantage of the lack of skill among technicians at U.S. shipyard. Currently, Hyundai Heavy Industries has shipyards in Vietnam and Subic Bay, Philippines, but no ship owner disputes the quality of its ships. Also, if we make it a law that requires the use of American energy transport ship when exporting American energy, European energy companies will purchase American energy transport ships no matter how expensive they are. the United States will be able to export energy as well as advanced LNG ships and super tankers. And if the United States enacts a law that only allows ships built in shipyards that the United States recognizes for their stability and quality to enter American ports and transit the Panama Canal, the entire world will use American-made ships. If you make an exception for Korean shipyards in this process, all Chinese shipyards will fail in business within 6 months. Also, when Korean companies purchase American energy, you should allow them to use Korean energy carriers. Hyundai Heavy Industries, Korean shipbuilding equipment manufacturers, shipping companies, and U.S. shipyards will make a lot of money. Hyundai Heavy Industries will be happy because it will eliminate a competitor called China. And it will be happy because it will certainly have sales in the U.S. that it didn't have before. If all the shipyards in China go bankrupt, Chinese steel companies, electrical and electronics companies, and the paint companies will all go bankrupt. But in the end, Korean and American companies will make a lot of money. Chinese shipyards cut off from ship part supplies from Korea, Germany, Japan, and elsewhere will fail with their ships sitting in the dock, leaving the Chinese Navy unable to build or repair ships because it has no docks to build them. China is importing parts from Korea, Germany, and Japan, claiming that they are for commercial ships and using them to build Chinese naval ships and submarines. If the import of ship parts is blocked, it will be difficult to repair Chinese naval ships and submarines, and they will all be out of service within 6 months. Since Chinese parts are not tested for durability, they often develop tiny cracks inside the ship's engine. And to find the problem, the engine, which is as large as a 3-story office building, must be dismantled. However, it is not just one part that has a problem, but rather when high pressure is applied, cracks appear one after another. So even after several years, the problem cannot be found and eventually the ship has to be scrapped. It would take less than a minute for President Donald J. Trump to sign this executive order. And if you ban any ships with even a single Chinese sailor on board from entering American port and block passage through the Panama Canal, the flow of dollars flowing into China will decrease significantly. You can make excuse like there is no other way because Chinese sailors often smuggle and traffic drugs, and ships carrying sailors from pro-China countries also need to be banned from entering U.S. port. Then ships from pro-Chinese countries will automatically be blocked from entering U.S. port, and all high-ranking crew members, such as navigators and engineers, will have to be replaced with Koreans. If the U.S. shipyards are lacking in capacity and are lagging behind China in building ships for the U.S. Navy, then reducing the shipping building capacity of Chinese shipyard to zero will allow the U.S. Navy to build ships relatively faster. It's that simple. If such a measure is implemented, China will be in a virtual maritime blockade. If they negotiate with British ship insurance companies to raise the insurance premiums for ships built in Chinese shipyard, ship owners around the world will replace all Chinese ships. Moreover, Chinese shipping companies will have to provide several times more precious dollars to British marine insurance companies than they already do, which will rapidly deplete China's dollar reserves. If we put strong pressure on countries around the world to block ships without insurance certificates issued by British marine insurance companies from entering port, the number of ports open to ships built in Chinese shipyard will be greatly reduced. During the Korean War, the Korean, British, and the American forces were pushed back by the Chinese army at Chosin Reservoir and eventually withdrew to the port of Hongnan, 128 kilometers away. In the process, about 4,500 American soldiers froze to death without even being able to fight. Many British and Korean soldiers also died in the process. So, Korea and the UK and the US needs to join hands and suck up all the dollars held by Chinese shipyard and shipping companies and then put them all out of business. It would be a fantastic picture if Britain, UK were to charge high insurance premiums to Chinese ships, the US were to ban ships built in Chinese shipyard from entering US port, and Korea were to build large shipyard in the US and build merchant ships there and sell them at high price. China's shipbuilding and shipping industry could be dismantled and divided among Korea, the UK, and the United States. If they see that Hyundai Heavy Industry is making a lot of money by investing in the United States, other Korean shipyards will also build a large-scale shipyard in the United States. And Hyundai Heavy Industries also has shipyard in Vietnam and Philippines. So, if these countries make a lot of money they will be able to buy Korean fighter jet and ships to defeat the Chinese Navy and Air Force in the South China Sea. From Hyundai Heavy Industries' perspective, it would not be a burden at all to invest $10 to $30 billion in the United States shipping industry to build a shipyard 5 times larger than the Ulsan shipyard. If a large shipyard is built in the U.S. and is properly operated, American steel companies, electrical and electronic companies, paint companies, and other companies related to the shipbuilding industry will make a lot of money, and many jobs will be created in the United States. Therefore, I would appreciate it if you could make the tariffs on Korean product 0%. Now, China is threatening to stop exporting rare earth elements, but later on, China will be unable to secure merchant ships and will have to depend on Korea and the U.S. China will become diplomatically dependent on U.S. and Korea. If Chinese naval vessels are running low on spare parts within 6 months, the U.S. Navy will also have some spare time. In the meantime, if Korea mass-produces Aegis ships and submarines and deploys them in the West Sea of the Korean Peninsula, the Chinese Navy and the Air Force will gather in the North China Sea to protect Beijing. The U.S.-China hegemony war will turn into South Korea-China hegemony war. Currently, South Korea imports about $100 billion worth of energy annually from the Middle East, but it cannot resell it to neighboring countries. So if President Donald J. Trump were to allow South Korea to sell American energy at a special price to South Korea and resell it to neighboring countries, we could shift half of our energy imports from the Middle East to American energy. If I were the president of Korea, I would buy American energy cheaply, get cash from China first, and then sell it back to China at a very high price, taking all the Chinese dollars. Or I could just get money from China first and not give them oil. Sun's The Art of War states that the best way to fight a war is to loot the enemy's weapons and supplies for our own use. There is nothing more thrilling than buying American energy cheaply and selling it to China for a high price, and then using the dollars earned to buy a bunch of American fighter jets. If the ROK Navy purchased 20 F-35C stealth fighters and deployed them on U.S. aircraft carriers, allowing ROK and U.S. naval fighters to operate together, the ROK and U.S. alliance will become even more stronger. If this happens, South Korea will automatically intervene in the Taiwan issue along with the United States. The storage facilities for radioactive waste from South Korea's nuclear power plant are nearly full. The waste must be dumped in the Pacific Ocean. I would appreciate it if President Donald J. Trump would allow us to build a facility to reprocess South Korea's radioactive waste. The South Korean Navy's construction and possession of nuclear-powered submarine and nuclear-powered aircraft carriers could cause major problems in 30 years. Because Korea has a small territory only, there is no place to even dismantle merchant ships. So, all the merchant ships are sold to overseas scrap metal companies, and the warships are given away for free to friendly countries. If we build nuclear-powered submarines and nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, it will be impossible to dismantle them after 30 years. We also cannot give these ships to friendly countries for free. And it is also impossible to build and export nuclear-powered submarine and nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. Also, nuclear weapons are meaningless to the South Korean military. The Chinese and North Korean military have built military bases 100 meters underground. So, even if a nuclear missile exploded in the air, it is impossible to destroy the underground military facilities. For North Korea and China, who are already not afraid of American nuclear missiles, South Korean nuclear missiles are not something to be afraid of. Therefore, the South Korean military created the Hyunmoo-5 missile, which can penetrate 300 meters underground and explode, and is currently working on increasing its range and starting mass production. The Hyunmoo-5 ballistic missile has a warhead weight of 9 tons. If it falls from space at the speed of over Mach 10 and hits the ground, the shock wave will cause many buildings to collapse. Also, if it explodes 300 meters underground, it will cause an artificial earthquake underground. So, most buildings will collapse and all living things will be killed by the shock wave. Nowadays, the Chinese military evaluates that the South Korean Hyunmoo-5 is more fearsome than the U.S. nuclear missile. If the South Korean military needs nuclear weapons, the most realistic way would be to mount U.S. nuclear warheads on Hyunmoo-5 ballistic missile. South Korea has a small territory and no place to hide nuclear missiles. There is no place to store nuclear missiles, and they cannot be exported overseas. So there is no reason to spend a lot of money to make and store nuclear weapons. However, if President Donald J. Trump wants South Korea to have nuclear submarines and nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, it would be a good idea to build three 110,000-ton aircraft carriers with South Korea's defense budget and keep them on standby around the Korean Peninsula for joint use with the U.S. Navy. The South Korean Navy could also build several nuclear-powered submarines with performance on par with the U.S. nuclear submarines and permanently station them in the waters around Jeju Island to prevent the Chinese Navy from coming onto the island. The ROK Navy is not capable of operating nuclear-powered submarines on its own. So, the ROK and U.S. navies will have to operate them jointly. This would have the effect of allowing the United States Navy to have an aircraft carrier group and several nuclear-powered submarines stationed around the Korea Peninsula at all times without spending a single penny, which would significantly reduce the U.S. Navy's defense budget. If I were the President of Korea, I would turn the entire Korean Peninsula into an unsinkable aircraft carrier. There is an island called Dokjeok-do off the coast of Incheon, which is about the half size of Incheon International Airport. It would be great to make this island into a maritime military base and have the Korean and the American navies and air forces use it together. From this island, Beijing is about 900 kilometers away. Dalian, China, where there is a Chinese naval base, is about 440 kilometers away. And Qingdao, where there is a Chinese naval base, is about 540 kilometers away. If we install defensive missiles such as THAAD and the Aegis ashore on Dokjeok Island and deploy a large number of supersonic surface-to-ship missiles with a range of 500 kilometers and medium to long-range surface-to-surface missiles developed in Korea, the Chinese Navy and the Air Force will be forced to gather in the sea between the Shandong and the Liaodong Peninsula to defend Beijing. There is only sea between Dokjeok Island and the cities in northern China, such as Beijing, Tianjin, Tangshan, Changzhou, Yantai, Dalian, and Qingdao. So, deploying a large number of surface-to-surface missiles would suffocate China. Deploying 100 KF-21 developed in Korea on Dokjeok Island would be a good idea, or introducing and deploying an additional 60 F-35A, or introducing and deploying an additional 60 F-15EX would be also good options. And if we introduce and deploy 100 CH-53 King Stallion helicopters with long-range penetration capabilities, 5,000 South Korean soldiers will be able to land on the Liaodong Peninsula and the Shandong Peninsula in China at the same time in the event of the emergency. Therefore, the Chinese military will have to concentrate its ships and fighter jets in these regions to defend the Shandong Peninsula and the Liaodong Peninsula. If the North China region becomes dangerous, the Chinese Navy will not be able to think about advancing into the Pacific. In this situation, if the Korean Navy builds a large number of 15,000-ton full-load Aegis destroyer, 4,000-ton full-load Korean Aegis frigates, 10,000-ton full-load Korean Aegis destroyers KDDX, and 3,000-ton submarines equipped with SLBM and deploys them in the West Sea of the Korea Peninsula. It will be impossible for the Chinese Navy ships to leave the West Sea empty and go out to Pacific. If Chinese naval vessels are concentrated in the northern China regions, they can be sunk by using supersonic surface-to-ship missiles or supersonic ship-to-ship missiles with a range of 500 kilometers developed by South Korea. The 300-kilometer ranges, Mach 3 supersonic air-to-ship missiles mounted on the 4.5 generation stealth fighters KF-21 and FA-50 light fighters developed by South Korea will be deployed starting in 2028, and all Chinese naval ships can be sunk with these missiles. It is possible for the South Korean military alone to sink all of the Chinese naval vessels without the help of the U.S. Forces Korea or the U.S. 7th Fleet. There are also several small islands located about 17 kilometers southwest of Dokjeok Island. If these are connected and reclaimed, an island about half the size of the Incheon International Airport will be created. It is expected to take about 5 years to reclaim the land and build various buildings. If I were president of the Korea, I would build a maritime military base on this landfill using the Korean government budget for the sole use of the U.S. Navy and the Air Force. The U.S. Navy and Air Force would have unsinkable aircraft carriers on the west coast of the Korea Peninsula. If I were the president of Korea, I would build a maritime military base for the U.S. Air Force and the Navy on a rocky island called Gago Island, about 130 kilometers northwest of Jeju Island, using the budget of the Korean government. The size of Gago Island is about half that of Incheon International Airport. The distance from this island to Qingdao, where the Chinese naval base is located, is about 490 kilometers, and there is nothing but sea between Qingdao and Gago Island. So it would be possible to sink all Chinese ships departing from Qingdao with supersonic surface-to-ship missiles. Also, in the southwest of Jeju Island, there is the Alturu airfield used by the Japanese military. We will purchase the surrounding rice paddies and the fields and build a U.S. naval base and Air Force base with the Korean government budget. It is only about 490 kilometers from Alteru Airfield to Shanghai, China. The U.S. will have a total of 3 unsinkable aircraft carriers on the west coast of the Korean Peninsula. If this happens in reality, it will be impossible for the Chinese Navy to advance into the Pacific, and all ships will be gathered on the west coast of the Korean Peninsula or near Jeju Island to defend Beijing and Shanghai. We can lure the Chinese ships like this, gather them together, and destroy them with supersonic surface-to-ship missiles, supersonic air-to-ship missiles, or supersonic ship-to-ship missiles developed by the Korean military. If I were the president of Korea, I would purchase 30 additional P-8 maritime patrol aircraft to destroy Chinese ships and submarines around the Korean Peninsula. If I were the president of Korea, I would negotiate with the Philippines to lease an island in the northern Philippines and the southern Taiwan and build a base for the Korean Navy, Korean Air Force, and the Korean Marine Corps. Then, Chinese naval vessels and submarines operating in the South China Sea will be blocked from leaving for the Pacific Ocean, and it will be difficult for the Chinese military to easily attack Taiwan. The Chinese Navy will be confined in the South China Sea by the Korean Air Force and the Navy and will be gathered around Taiwan, making it difficult for them to leave for the Pacific Ocean. At the same time, if the Korean government provides the Philippines with a security loan of $10 billion from its budget, builds a KF-21 factory in the Philippines, and produce 100 KF-21 for the Philippine Air Force, the Chinese Navy and the Air Force will both become fish food in the South China Sea because of the Philippine Air Force's KF-21. And also, if I were the president of Korea, it would be possible for the Korean government to bear 100% of the cost of stationing U.S. troops in Korea. Furthermore, it would not be difficult to provide an additional $10 billion to the cost of stationing U.S. troops in Korea. Because the United States sent 1,789,000 young American youth to protect peace and freedom in this Korean land during the Korean War. More than 130,000 American young youths were killed, injured, or went missing in this land. And the United States used $68 billion of our great American tax money to protect freedom and human rights in Korea. The United States has already paid a sufficient amount of money in advance 70 years ago to protect Korea. Americans and Koreans are brothers in Jesus Christ. Since the blood of more than 130,000 American youth's blood has already been shed on this land. Sacrifices were made. Koreans and Americans are brothers of mixed blood. The beautiful tradition of Korea is not to receive money from brothers. Rather, it is the universal sentiments of Koreans to want to give one more good thing to their brothers. However, the pro-China and pro-North Korea forces that dominate the Korean political world are causing discord in the Korea and U.S. alliance. President Donald J. Trump, please designate all left-wing political parties in South Korea as terrorist organizations linked to North Korea and freeze their party account and party buildings and other assets. Please designate all politicians, aides, party officials, and members of left-wing parties as a terrorist organization and seize their personal assets. Also, please designate the Korean Confederation of Trade Union, the Korean Metal Workers Union, the Government Employees Union, the Citizens Coalition for Democratic Media, and the Korean Teachers and Education Workers Union, which receive orders from North Korea and China as terrorist organizations linked to North Korea, and freeze all of assets of these organizations and the personal assets of their members. Also, please designate MBC, KBS, 연합뉴스, 한겨레, Media Today, 오마이뉴스, and 경향신문, which serve as mouthpieces for North Korea, and the Chinese Communist Party as an organization linked to North Korea, and freeze all their assets. Please also freeze all personal assets of reporters affiliated with these organizations. In any case, the members of this group have participated in anti-American rallies, anti-Japanese rallies, pro-North Korean rallies, and pro-Chinese rallies, or have played a role in creating anti-American and pro-Chinese public opinion, thereby creating a rift in the ROK and U.S. alliance. Therefore, if all the assets of these groups and the assets of their individual members are frozen, they will all be kicked out, and hundreds of thousands of jobs will be created. So Koreans will like it. And since most Koreans watch YouTube on their phones, they are not affected at all by the closure of a few broadcasting stations. And they don't care if a few broadcasting stations disappeared. Also, the 조선일보, 중앙일보, and 동아일보, which are representative pro-China media outlets, have most of their owners and their families with assets in the United States, and their children in the US. So, please freeze all their assets and expel all their relatives in the US. Also, expel the correspondents dispatched to the US from these three media outlets and give them major coverage in the US media. Then all Koreans will become to their senses. They ridicule, ignore, and look down on the power of the United States and still firmly believe that China can beat the United States. They receive a lot of advertising from pro-China companies. So they need to feel the power of the United States. And major universities across the country, including Seoul National University, Yonsei University, Korea University, and Hanyang University, have established Xi Jinping Memorial Halls and Confucius Institutes, which are facilities related to the Chinese Communist Party. We ask that you cease all exchanges between Korean universities and American universities that have facilities related to the Chinese Communist Party and forcibly expel all Korean professors and exchange students who are dispatched from Korean universities to American universities. The universities that have Xi Jinping Memorial Halls and Confucius Institute are the ones where the president and the professors have all fallen for the Chinese Communist Party's bribes. National universities such as Seoul National University and Busan National University are in the same situation and have already been fallen to educational institution of Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party is using Korean universities and Korean students as intermediaries to secretly steal cutting-edge technologies from the United States. Therefore, we ask that you immediately cease all exchanges between all Korean universities and American universities that have Chinese Communist Party related facilities and expel all those involved. We urge that you should permanently prohibit faculties, staff, and students at universities that have Chinese Communist Party related facilities from obtaining U.S. visas. I would appreciate it if you could understand that since more than 90% of Korea is already under the control of the Chinese Communist Party, we have no choice but to request such extreme measures in order to save Korea and the United States and to preserve the ROK-US alliance. And please create a Korea-US Alliance Foundation in 17 major cities in Korea and major universities across the country. And please appoint Dr. Lee Chun-gun, an eminent and distinguished international political scientist, as the person in charge on the Korean side. If the Korea-US Alliance Foundation were to issue U.S. visa only to those who have completed the required education on the history of the Korea-US alliance, pro-Chinese forces in Korea would be completely eradicated. We need to teach anew the history of the ROK-US alliance and international politics to all Koreans, starting with college students. And if the epoch time on American media outlets that exposes the true nature of the Chinese Communist Party had a cable TV channel in Korea, more Koreans would realize the true nature of the Chinese Communist Party than they do now. Also, please consider allowing pro-Trump media outlets like Fox News in the United States to start cable broadcasting in Korea. And if those stations also broadcast in Korean, it will be easier for more Koreans to understand President Donald J. Trump's policies. In 2023, Yoon Suk-yeol government set the defense budget at 57 trillion won, about $38.6 billion, and provided 102.3 trillion won, about $69.4 billion, in government subsidies to non-governmental organizations. In addition, 24 trillion won, about $16.2 billion, were spent on the adult responsive budget. These two amount 126.3 trillion won, about $85.7 billion, are amount whose productivity has not been verified and are mostly budgeted for the ecosystem of left-wing civic groups. In half of this amount, 63 trillion won, about $43.7 billion, were converted to defense spending. The annual defense budget could be increased to 120 trillion won, about $83 billion. So, it is not at all impossible to induce an arms race with China and bankrupt the Chinese economy. In any case, as the Korean military's defense budget increases, a large number of outdated weapons will have to be replaced. So the price of Korean weapons will gradually fall down, increasing arms exports by Korean defense companies. We could also establish a space force in the ROK military to conduct joint operations with the U.S. Space Force. And we could even induce the Chinese military to waste money on space, thereby bankrupting their economy early. If President Donald J. Trump, you were to impose heavy tariffs on Chinese goods, but not on Korean goods, and instead of help Korean companies absorb the market share that Chinese companies had in the U.S., we could introduce a large number of American weapons. Thank you for listening. God bless United States of America. May the Lord bless America and all American people. Thank you.